Commission. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could have a roll call of attendance, please.
Of course. Commissioner Allen is absent. Commissioner Jesse?
Here.
Commissioner Marin?
Here.
Commissioner Woodham?
Here.
Commissioner Samples, absent. Commissioner Sherman?
Here.
Chair Castle?
Here. Please stand while we salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is to approve the order of agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any blue folder items tonight?
There are no blue folder items tonight.
Okay, thank you. Next is item F, the consent calendar. In the consent calendar tonight, we have approval of the affidavit for posting of the regular Budget and Finance Commission meeting for September 12th, and then approval of the minutes from the Budget and Finance Commission meetings as of May 9th, June 13th, July 11th, and August 8th. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
There are no excluded consent calendar items. Are there any public participation on non-agenda items tonight?
We do not have anyone on Zoom, and there are no e-comments.
Okay, thank you. There are no items continued from previous agendas, which brings us up to items J for discussion prior to action tonight. First, we're going to have the communication to the City Council regarding the City Attorney's salary. And we'll have our Finance Director, Stephanie Meyer, present this.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. I may actually turn this back to you, Chair Castle. This is an opportunity for us to share with the Commission the letter that the Commission put together and our Chair signed and sent to the City Council for their consideration of the City Attorney's salary item.
Okay. A copy of the letter was included in the packet for tonight. And as we discussed at our last meeting, I drafted a letter and actually Commissioner Samples was able to comment and get his comments back to me on it before I submitted it to the City Council. And when the item went before the City Council, the HR department did have time to put a more robust package together about salaries and added more cities to their report. And I do know that some of the councilmen did a little bit more research on their own. And at the end of the day, instead of, I think in our package, it sort of pointed toward an 8% increase, but the City Council decided to increase the salary 3% based on all the additional information that they received. So I think, our input was well received and, they were able to come to a better decision for the city. Do you have a question?
They determined that the salary was, we've heard from some sources that it's the highest city attorney in the state, or some words to that effect. They determined that that was not the case, or?
Well, I just sort of scanning through some of the material that they had, they were looking at things like the dollars per population of various cities, then size of the cities, and then, what was included in the full package of benefits and everything else. So I think in some ways it did look more expensive. But in terms of, I think just the base salary of about $270, $274, they voted to go with a 3% increase, which is like an inflationary increase.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So just wanted to, provide that letter to you that we decided to write and, let you know what happened with that. And that I think, we did our job in terms of advising them and letting them get more information to come up with a better decision. Next is our discussion on our pension and the information from CalPERS.
Excuse me, Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Just for the record, there were no Zoom attendees or e-comments for that item.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Stephanie?
Hey, thank you. So we're back again to discuss our pensions. I'll go over the admin report really quickly at a high level before diving into the presentation. We did include a couple attachments for your review. The first item is CalPERS 23-24 fiscal year final investment returns. As you can see in the attached press release that CalPERS sent out, they're at 9.3%, well above their 6.8% target. So this should be fairly good news for the city. It's not, you know, a huge amount over, but any amount over helps. You can see that this return drove up the 5-year, 10-year, and 20-year returns slightly. So in particular, the 20-year return, which is the amortization schedule, is close to their target rate, so it's at 6.7%. So, you know, every time they do that, it adjusts the long-term rates a little bit, and in this, at this point, in a positive way. We will see the effect of this positive investment return in our 26-27 budget or in our next year's valuation. So this is just information I wanted to share with the commission. I don't know if anyone had comments or questions on that part of the information. If not, I'll move on to the second item. So I also included with the report copies of our miscellaneous and public safety valuations. So those are our whole documents as we receive them from CalPERS. The kind of headline or highlights that I put in the report, the city's UAL did increase by about 15.5 million to 58 million. And this is in part due to the 22-23 investment returns falling short of the 6.8% target. And we also saw some losses in non-investment experience, which we can talk about a little bit in the presentation. So if you can pull up the presentation. So what I wanted to do for you in the slides that we shared in advance is two things. One, point you to some, you know, the valuation results at a high level. And then secondly, I wanted to go back to some of the questions that this commission has posed over the past several months about the calculation of the UAL.
Oh, it's.
All right. Okay, so before we begin, I don't know what the spacing's a little messed up. I apologize for that. Before we begin, I just wanted to make a note on the dates. So as we've discussed in this meeting many times, our valuation dates always get very confusing. We just received these reports last August, so in 2024. They reflect data as of the year ending 6/30/23, and these are our contribution rates for 25-26. Because of the multiple fiscal years, I'm just talking about them as our fiscal year 25-26 valuation, since that's the budget year they impact.
Stephanie,
Yep.
Question there.
Yep.
When did we get this report?
August.
August.
Yep, I think I put the, yep.
I still don't understand why they would call this a 2024 report, when in fact we've got data, actual data through June 30th of 23. And do they use an estimate for 24, the actuarial assumption? Do they use that return assumption?
They do not. So they base this on the actual data of June 30th, 2023.
And do we know why this is a year delayed? I mean,
Yes.
if they do it in August, they have 2024 returns. So I've never understood why it is a year looking back.
So the return is just one component of the valuation that they're putting together. They're also looking at the actual experience of the plan participants. So it takes a while for them to gather all of that data and put it together. The other reason for the timing is that they like to give agencies time to kind of review and plan for the rates when they will impact those agencies' budgets. This is the explanation that they provide in their reports. It's also, you know, standard in other actuarial reports that we get. And I believe in the industry, we have a different firm doing our other post-employment benefit valuations, and they use the same process. I think it's just a lengthy time period to put all of the data together.
Further in the presentation in the back, when they calculate the total liability that we have, there are parts of it that are, a large part of it are present value calculations based on actuarial assumptions. So the actual financial returns number is just one line item. And I think it's the other parts that take so long to.
What kind of data is not available for the year ending June 30th, 24? What sort of, do we have any idea what sort of data isn't there?
So I don't know if the data is not available. Again, I can ask our actuary in more detail. I think the issue is more just the time it takes to pull all of the data together and run it through all their models and run all of those together. I think it's more the time it takes to put the data together rather than the fact that the data is not available.
Yeah, the problem again is we're always dealing with 1 year delayed data. We're always looking at data that is either under-calculated or over-calculated based on today. So with an example here, we've got a 9% return through the end of 24, which changes the accrued liability because all of a sudden it's 3%, 2.5%, 3% higher than actuarial. Looking at it last year, we overestimated it because we had a negative return that we weren't including. So that part of it still puzzles me. With all the ability we have to calculate this stuff, or that CalPERS has, that we've lived with this all along, I guess, and we continue to live with it. And I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but I just don't understand why they can't do the calculation in real time.
I mean, I could ask them this specifically. You know, they address it briefly in their reports, and they basically say it's timing, as I just mentioned. I think the other thing from their perspective is that while, you know, this data is as of 6/30/23, we are going to see the impact of all the years at some point, right? So it's not that we're missing something. We're just a year behind. Is your concern that it would benefit us? Because again, we're going to have the same impact of the same experience. It's just in a different time period.
There'll be times when it benefits us and times when it hurts us. It depends on what the most recent year has been. If it's been a great year, we're overestimating, we're overcalculating the accrued liability. If it's an under year, it's the other way. So
again, I'm happy to ask them this in more detail. That's kind of the explanation that they've given. And again, I think it's
they'll give
fairly
you the
standard
same
practice.
explanation again. It's just maybe I'm tilting against windmills, but doggone it, they should be able to give us an up-to-date calculation. I'm not taking you to task, and I know what they'll, if they told you this once, they'll tell it to you again. It's just a day. So I understand what they're saying. I just disagree with the model.
Understood.
If they elected me to CalPERS, I'd do it differently.
You can run.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works. So some highlights for our valuations, which again, this is going to impact our contributions and rates for 25-26. As I mentioned, we have increases to both the city's annual payment and our unfunded liability for both safety and miscellaneous plans. And I put some these numbers there for you by plan. High level, our payment total will increase about 1.4 million in fiscal year 25-26 compared to the current fiscal year. And that includes a $4.3 million unfunded liability payment as compared to about the $3.3 million that we're going to pay this year. In terms of our unfunded accrued liability, as I mentioned, we increased in total to about 58 million. As you can see, our combined funded ratio is still high. Combined is above 90%, and in our miscellaneous plan, it's still up close to 95%. So I did have a pretty detailed discussion with our actuary about these numbers and about the changes. He mentioned that, you know, both of our funded ratios, even the public safety that dropped a little below, you know, I was going to say below 90, it's basically 90, is still from his perspective, it's at a very healthy level. And then the last point I'd like to point out is that we do see some positive impact from PEPRA in the results of this report. So I didn't include any screenshots or anything here, but the normal cost for both public safety and miscellaneous employees, sorry, the normal cost to the city decreases in 25-26. This means as a percentage of the city's payroll, we are paying less for the normal cost, which is the cost to kind of fund the ongoing cost of our pensions as opposed to the UAL. So I was discussing this with Commissioner Katzel a little bit. He was asking me where he's going to see the numbers go down in the valuation. Unfortunately, that does not mean you're going to see numbers go down. What it does mean is that compared to the alternative, you're going to see our liability increase more slowly over time, which is, again, exactly what PEPRA was supposed to do, and structurally is great news for the city long-term. I'll also point out here employee contributions in the public safety plan, in the public safety PEPRA plan, also increased slightly in 25-26. So that means that our PEPRA public safety members will contribute slightly more. So that's our 25-26 kind of very high level. Again, talking this over with the city manager, who's just mentioning, obviously these are the numbers for 25-26 that we'll need to be thinking about in the budget process for 25-26. So that includes how to fund our ongoing normal cost, which is our kind of core pension expenses, and our unfunded liability costs. So in this section, I wanted to try and address some of the questions that the commission has had about the development of our unfunded liability. To do this, I was going to go over high level the assets and the liabilities and try and demonstrate it with some of the information that's in our valuations. I think once we go through it, it will help to explain the calculation and some of the things that you've seen over time. Please feel free to interrupt or ask questions if it doesn't make sense. This may be more information than anyone wanted to see, but I think it may help us get through it. So starting with assets, this includes the city's contributions and investment returns net of our payment expenses. And they have this very helpful chart in every valuation. So we start up here with the prior year's market value of assets. So this is as of 6/30/22, and these are all the factors that they take into account to get to our new calculation of market value of assets for 6/30/23. So as you see here, this is our investment return. That's the result of the 5.8%. Here are our benefit payments and our employer and employee contributions. And then you have various other expenses here and, kind of smaller components. But this is how these are the factors impacting how they calculate the value of our assets in 1 year. And I'll just point out too, this is only our miscellaneous plan. So for the city as a whole, we'd add our miscellaneous and safety. So then we get to our liabilities. As Chair Castle mentioned earlier, our liabilities is the present value today of all the benefits that the city will pay out in the future. So as each year goes by, we'll have one fewer year of discounting. So this liability grows about 6.8% annually. We have an additional year of service accrual. And again, our normal cost is set to fully fund this if we meet all of our assumptions, including the investment return. And then again, our benefit payments during that year will reduce the liability. So over time, we accrue those unfunded liabilities when our actual experience does not meet those expectations. And again, that's for our investment return, the 6.8%. And that is also for the experience of our actual employees. So it's how long our employees are living, what their pay increases are, what inflation is, when they retire, when new people come in. There are a lot of factors that affect the actual plan, and that impacts our liability as well. So the way that they show this, again, there's another useful table in our actuarial report. This top part here, so this is the present value of projected benefits, and they break this down by our active, transferred, separated, and the members and beneficiaries receiving payments. So you can see here is the 22 and 23. They then break down the present value of current and future year contributions, and these are related to our active members. Then a number 4 here, They put this all together. So we have this present value, and then they net out the value of the contributions. So you can see here, this is our liability. There's our market value of assets that we saw calculated on the previous page, and this is where we get to our unfunded accrued liability amount. So this is kind of a nice place to bring our liabilities and our market value of assets together and kind of see where this unfunded liability develops. This is another way to look at this. So this is our summary of our annual gain loss, which a lot of times is what we're trying to figure out. We're trying to figure out what happened. So what went up, what went down during the year to lead to our returns. So you see it again here. Here's our investment. So it's made up of our investment and non-investment experience. So again, we see our market value of assets here. You have your receivables, you have your benefits paid. Here you have the expected return. So this is what our investment return would have been if they'd earned at the 6.8% target. As you remember, this was more like 13 million. And here we get to our investment gain loss. So we had about a $1.8 million investment loss for the period. And again, they go through non-investment. This is less detailed. It's more of a calculation. So they take here's our total gain loss. So they have total gain loss. They subtract out the investment gain. So our non-investment gain loss. And this is what reflects the actual experience of the members in the plan compared to the actuarial assumptions around some of the factors I told you about earlier. Age, retirement, pay increases, inflation. So you see that for our miscellaneous plan, we actually had a gain in this. I talked to our actuary and he said our experience almost 100% matched expectations, but we're slightly on the positive side. So we got a little bit of a gain there to offset our investment loss. So now we get to the exciting part. What makes up our UAL calculation? And I think this table, there's a prior example. I think this can help explain some of the difficulty in looking at year by year the investment return and the change to the unfunded liability. So each unfunded liability it represents a layering of each year's experience. So they take every year, you have your non-investment and investment experiences. Each one of these is amortized over 20 years. So if you see down here, and I used a prior year example because we have more years showing up there. So you see this is at amortization period 6. So they start at 20, or actually maybe they're starting at 30 here. CalPERS changed their assumptions. But this means that they're going to amortize the effect of this assumption change over 5 more periods. So this is this amount, and this will add up, all of this adds up to your $55.2 million liability. So while again, your most recent year's experience, right, is your this year here. So you had a loss related to an assumption change, and it looks like there was actually a fairly large investment gain here. But again, this is one portion. So in addition to the most recent investment and non-investment experience, you have the 20-year amortization of all the prior years that impact it. So, and depending on the magnitude of what these changes are, you may not see the positive gain that you'll think you'll get, or you may see, less of a negative gain or, less of a loss than you might expect, because in addition to the prior year, you're experiencing the amortization of all of them.
That answers one of the questions
Yep.
I had sent to you, which was there were years there where the gain or loss gave a disproportionate amount of gain or loss to the UAL. What we don't know is what was dropped from the 20-year amortization and what went on it. So there's a lot of moving parts to that calculation.
There are, and you can see, this table is actually very, very useful to look at over time, because you can see every year, next year you're going to look at the same thing. This is now going to be in year 5. Eventually, this is going to drop off, right? And you'll see the impact of some of your other changes here. But I think the other thing that's helpful to see here too is, sometimes we have really good years and we'll get, a huge gain, and then it feels like we don't see it again. We don't know where it goes. But if you look here, you can see again, they're amortizing those gains over 20 years, the same as they're amortizing losses over 20 years. So you'll be able to look in this table and you can see that contributing to the UAL, total. So if we look at our most recent one, and again, this is just our miscellaneous plan, we can see exactly what went into this. So we are only showing 2 years here because we paid off everything 2 years ago. So we actually have fairly few things in here to look at. But you see here, we had a slight benefit change. Not exactly sure what this was, but 1 and 2, this is our prior year non-investment experience. They call this partial fresh start. I talked to the actuary. He does not like that. I guess they had a big fight over what to call this and settled on partial fresh start, even though it's really investment losses. So what you can see here is this is a large number. This is our big investment loss. And actually, the total, so the vast majority of what we're seeing here in our $12.8 million UAL is the impact of that loss in its second year of amortization. And then we have, so we can see our current year, and we have our 1.86 investment loss, which we're familiar with from the previous slides, and our non-investment gain. So our annual UAL, it's going to include the impact of all our gains and losses over time. And I added this additional chart just to show you this breakdown, and you can see the layering here for our total unfunded liability. So again, here's our miscellaneous plan. These are the numbers that we were just looking at getting to this 12.8. Here's our safety plan, which again, this is going to have the higher liability and the higher amounts due to the higher benefits in the safety plan. But you can see here the same thing. Here's our 24-25. This year, we have slightly different amounts because for the investment gains, there's a ramp, and then it's a slightly different calculation for the amortization in the second year. So you can see we have the same amounts for our 2022 carrying across these 2 years, and then we're layering 6/30/23. So again, we can see our numbers we recognize here. So UAL went up by about 2.2 million. And then we can look at our numbers, same numbers here for safety. And again, you can just kind of see the same layering pattern. So again, our total 15.5 million, amortization of prior year expenses, prior year investment losses is about $3.5 million of that. Our most recent is about 5.1 if you include miscellaneous and safety. And then this item here, I just wanted to mention it because it looks a little bit large compared to some of these things. This is the non-investment experience. And I just wanted to clarify this. I've talked about it a little bit, but this is a combination of, so our experience is some of those things that I mentioned. Again, how long people are living, how long they're in service, if, how long they're staying in jobs, what kind of staff that are coming in and at what level. CalPERS is going to have assumptions for all of those things on a person-by-person basis, and then they will compare our experience against their plan-wide experience. So sometimes our experience is favorable to us. Sometimes our experience is unfavorable to us. It frequently does not have a direct connection to things that we would be familiar with, like pay increases. This is a combination of a lot of things. And historically, this has actually been quite favorable for us, as you can see on the miscellaneous side. But for this year, it's was unfavorable for us, and that contributed to our liability. And for fun, I added our new year to this nice table. Commissioner Woodham suggested this one, and I like this format. So the last time we looked at this, we ended at our 52.4 here. I added our total UAL for this year. So this adds our investment return and experience to this UAL. It's a new layer. And then again, here's our 9.3%. And we will find out what that does to our UAL in August of '25. And again, so we'll see that, we'll see the impact of this investment return in our 26-27 budget. So while our 25-26 budget is a little challenging, we may hopefully see kind of at least like a ramp down for that in the following year. And then finally, I just wanted to address this question that has come up a few times with this commission. I discussed this with our actuary as well. What would actually happen if we came to CalPERS and said, we want to take all their assets out? There's actually in our valuations every year, there's a helpful page called, I printed this out so I remember it, funded status termination basis. So CalPERS does a little estimate calculation for us every year to tell us what this would look like. So the first thing that happens is we'd have a large lump sum payment. And this lump sum payment ends up being very large because the minute we tell CalPERS we're taking our investments out, we're terminating our plan, they move all of our assets into a smaller, low-risk pool. They can't count on any contributions from us over time, so they want to minimize their losses. So they call it risk-free assets. I think they said it's a weighted average of 10-year and 20-year treasuries, or no, it's 10-year and 30-year treasuries. So they put together a range. That estimate in 25-26 are these numbers here. It's $208 million to $483 million. Again, it's a wide range based on the discount rate, and that is compared to the city's current $58 million total unfunded liability. So it is a very large payment. We would then freeze compensation and service as of that date. And so the existing assets would pay for benefits earned up till that point, but that would not tell us what to do with current employees who are going to continue to work, and would also not give us, so the city would be in a position where we have a lot of active employees who are no longer earning in CalPERS, and where we cannot expect to have any funding from CalPERS pay out those additional years of benefit or benefits for any additional years that they're earning.
That 208 million to 483 million, that's the benefits that are promised to people on the payroll at the time we would terminate the account.
So they take our entire liability, and they do it in more detail on this page, but they take this and they calculate a termination liability for us. So they take that termination liability, which is again based on this lower rate. They compare that to our market value of assets as they are, and that's how they get the payment that we would need to make.
Do you know if any city has pulled out of CalPERS? Do you know this?
I would assume some cities have. I'm assuming this has occurred at some point. I do not know of any specifically.
I'm sorry, I mean, what was that question?
Are there any other cities that have pulled out already, historically?
Yeah.
So just to finish, I mean, if we, in the instance that we decided, hey, we're going to take our, 300 million, get it all out, do something else, we would still be liable for any discrepancy between these assets in, between whatever CalPERS earns in that lower risk fund and the benefit payments that we need to pay out because those contracts are still existing. We would have to figure out how to pay for future years of benefits for active employees and, whatever plan we decided we'd like to offer new employees. I think we would also just find it very difficult to recruit qualified employees. So that is the end of my presentation. I welcome your questions.
So one question that I had, if you could go back to that slide where we had the assets and the liabilities on one page.
This one or this?
Or this one. So when we talk about the 6.8% rate, that's the rate that the liability grows every year. And our total liability is, what is it?
It's 280.
Right, so it's 280, so that's what's growing at 6.8%. So when we get a market return on the smaller market assets, even if it's 9%, we could end up in a place where the 9% doesn't offset the 6.8% growth in the liability, given the size differential, right? So we're getting 9% on a smaller number and 6.8 on a larger number. And I think that that's why even in the good years, when we have like a 9 point plus return, we still have a growing UAL, which we never saw it presented like this, so we could never figure out why if we're outperforming. And so
And the fact that those gains and losses are amortized over 20 years also changes the
math a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, and then the other thing is that, so now on the smaller base of market, the asset side of balance of this calculation, the 20-year return is the 10, I think it's the 5, the 10, and the 20-year are all below 6.8.
Yeah.
So we're, over time, we're just being eroded. And so even though we were at 0 a couple of years ago when we made the payment, it's now all the way back down to 90. And I mean, just based on their past performance, it seems like that number's going to keep going down, the total percentage funded.
When does CalPERS do their analysis of expected return? They do that every 2 or 3 or 4 years, and I don't know when they did the last one, when they dropped it from 7 to 6.8.
That's a good question. I don't know when I don't think they have anything scheduled. Are you asking when they plan to make any changes to the discount rate?
Yeah.
I don't know that they have anything scheduled for the moment. And I would have to look. I'd have to find out when the board is next considering that.
I don't know how they go about doing their calculation exactly, but based on the returns that we've seen for the last few years, higher returns recently would tend to lower the expected returns going forward, especially if those returns, actual returns, have been much higher than what was expected at the time. So it's likely that the next change they make would be to lower that from 6.8 to some lower figure, not to raise it. So that would also increase our expenses because all of a sudden we're paying,
it's not so much
paying in more because we're assuming a lower rate of return.
But I don't know if it's so much the rate of return they're anticipating versus how much is going to actually be owed. So I think they actually look at more at inflation and what the value of the money is going out is going to be, not necessarily what the return they're going to get from the market. So I think the rate came down to a 6.8 because our inflation was so low. And so my concern is when they reevaluate it, they may actually have to raise it.
So that it's growing.
So it's not that you're right. When you have high returns early on, the market should not perform in the same way. But I don't think that that's the calculation they make.
And with lower returns going forward, if we do in fact have lower returns going forward, then this problem becomes
It amplifies. Yeah.
becomes bigger because we continue to add to unaccrued liability to UAL. If returns continue to be below 6.8 or below whatever the new level is, we've gotten this far at assuming rates of return of 6.8. If all of a sudden the new assumed rate is 6.5,
Right,
then
which has been their actual performance.
yeah.
And so there's one question to make.
But the numbers would on day one, if today they make the change of the assumed rate of return and it is 6.5 instead of 6.8, instead of having 50 or 60 million of UAL, we'd have substantially more UAL because the estimate going forward is not going to be that we'd earn 6.8. It's something lower.
Again, I think they look at inflation. I think they look at how long people live, how many people are hiring, what their salaries are, all those things.
All that
It's gonna,
affects it as well.
how much is this going to be worth? And then what return do we, then I think they back into a return that they need to actually make that happen. And that's where the delta comes up when we underperform.
This is good work. Thanks.
Yeah, thank
Thank you. Well, I have to credit yourself and Chair Castle for your continued questions. And yeah, I think, honestly, it's helped it it's helped clarify this for me as well. And I think this is going to be helpful for our understanding and planning going forward.
Are there any other questions? Are there any public comments or?
We do not have anyone on Zoom, and there are no e-comments for this item.
So I think with this, we need to receive and file is,
Yes.
okay. And could we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Justy? Commissioner Marin?
Aye.
Commissioner Woodham?
Aye.
Commissioner Sherman?
Aye.
Chair Kessel?
Aye. Thank you. Are there any items, member items or referrals to staff tonight? No. Any comments from staff? Any additional information?
I just have a couple of things that are kind of logistics, scheduling related. We had talked a little bit about our next meeting, which will be October 10th, and the timing for carryover. Just wanted to share the plan with the commission. The current plan, we're meeting on October 10th, and we're scheduled to take the report to council on October 15th. We realize that's, pretty close, but we're actually not going to be finalizing our report for council until the 11th. So we'll have room at least that one day to include, feedback. And if the commission has substantial feedback, then that's something we can take into consideration and, when we actually send it to council. I would commit to getting you this information, ideally on the 3rd and latest on the 7th, so you'll have a little bit of time to review. So if that sounds workable to this group, that's what we'll plan for carryover.
I think that should work.
You're gonna have just one day, that's it?
I will have one day to implement your many changes and include it in our report to council. But again, we do appreciate your input, and if it's significant, that's something we would consider in finalizing that report for council. Also on next meeting, we have 2 commissioners who were recently reappointed, so congratulations. And I believe our city clerk will be here at the next meeting. Is that correct? And then finally, the city manager mentioned to me, we will have a new item for this commission on vehicle replacement. So our Public Works Director, Andrew Wingy, will be coming either at our regular or special meeting. We're not sure exactly when this will be ready, but he'll come and present a report on vehicle replacement to the commission. And then finally, I'm in touch with our CalPERS representative to schedule someone to come for our December meeting. So you can tee up your remaining CalPERS questions for our December meeting. And that's all I had.
Okay, great.
Oh, actually, that is not all I had. I wanted to introduce Erin Smith. I think many of you were able to meet her before the meeting, but she's our analyst. We were very excited when she joined our department in, I think, last January. So I've asked Erin to be our new Budget and Finance Commission liaison. She's worked very closely on our quarterly budget reporting, and I'll have her present that to you at some point in the future so she can share her work, but excited to welcome her here, and I wanted to give her a chance to introduce herself.
Hello, I'm grateful to meet all of you guys and be here tonight. I'm going to be filling in some big shoes from Doug. So I'm Erin. I came from Palos Verdes Estates. I was there for 5.5 years working in the finance department. I did a lot of AP, transitioned over to analyst, and ended up being the senior staff accountant there. And then before that, I worked in the private sector. So still newbie, but yeah, I'm excited to be here, and it's been a great learning curve in producing a new budget as well. So it's been fun.
Thank you. We're happy
Good to have you. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Any other items? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.